Thanks to you and your delicious likes on my review for Welcome to Raccoon City, I'm now going to indulge you and make good on my promise that I'd talk more in depth about some of the points I made in my review, as well as clearing up a few things that may have been misunderstood. If you haven't yet watched the review, a link is in the description waiting for you. I think you'll find it to be at least mildly entertaining. And please be advised, this follow-up video will indeed contain spoilers. First of all, I stand by everything that was said in the review. It's how I genuinely felt at the time after having watched it twice. The reason I watched it twice, guys, wasn't because the film was so goddamn enjoyable that I just had to watch it again, far from it, but rather to write notes and to come at it from different perspectives, watching it once with sheer bias, then watching it again with objectivity. And with that in mind, I still believe it's a far better Resident Evil film as a whole when compared to the 2002 Anderson movie. However, and this is important, guys, the Anderson movie is a better movie overall, I find, especially when you take away the name from which it's based. It's clearly better shot, it's clearly better written, and it's clearly better paced, with far more entertaining scenarios and set pieces than WTRC. It's kind of like trying to pick a favourite between a pile of shit or a mound of vomit. But overall, I'd happily put myself through the 2002 movie than I would WTRC. It may lack the RE vibes, but it's just a more competent movie in its own right overall. There's a lot of hate going around the social media platforms right now when it comes to how fans generally feel about this new movie. It's understandable, sure, but to the levels that some people are taking it beggars belief that they didn't see this coming from the trailers that were released prior. Which is why I kind of feel that a lot of this hate is pure overreaction for the benefit of the viewer. The reason why I tackled my review in the way that I did, guys, that is to say in a manner that wasn't hate-fueled, was simply because, as disappointing as the movie is, I still found some level of enjoyment to be had, even though that enjoyment was purely based on my bias. I liked seeing the mansion and the RPD, I appreciated some of the references to the source material, one of which being the zombie from the first game. I enjoyed wondering where the writer and director was going to take me next, even though the cramming of 3 games into one movie was evidently one of the movie's biggest casualties. But even with these few positives, I did find that the movie was more bad than it was good. And I'd like to go through some of those negatives with you now, starting with some of the characters I didn't elaborate on in my review. Let me start by addressing Leon first, because there's been a bit of an overreaction here. First, it must be said, Leon from the original RE2 game is my favourite character in the Resident Evil series, next to Wesker, of course. I love how nobody ever really listens to him, you know? I love how truly out of his depth he is, yet still tries to take control of a situation. I love the fact that even though he's a rookie, he's still competent at his job, let alone as a human being, with common sense and compassion. In WTRC, that all pretty much goes out the window in favour of a pushover who constantly makes stupid mistakes, like walking up to a prison cell, for example, with a potentially dangerous criminal inside. Something I'm sure you're taught not to do when training to be a police officer. Honestly, even a child with mild intelligence would know better than to do what this 20-something cop did right here. It's just common sense. Come on, man. Whenever I think of Leon in the original RE2, I think of,
look, if you want to live, then you're gonna have to leave with me.
Come with me if you want to live.
So it naturally makes me wonder just how much of the source material the director experienced before pre-production. This portrayal of Leon and its clear separation from the Leon we know and love from the RE2 games is more than clear here. However, I still believe that, as much of a stretch that it is, guys, Leon alongside Chris are the two standouts in this film, in terms of some form of recognition to the characters in the games. That's just how I feel. Now that's definitely not to say that they're done well, guys. They ain't. Far from it. I want to make that clear right off the bat. But objectively speaking, I can at least find some traces of these two characters here, as limited as they are. The actor who plays Chris does look like a potential Chris Redfield in my opinion, in terms of aesthetics, so credit where credit's due here. But other than that particular feature, there's zero, and I mean zero definition into the character here. That is to say that the movie doesn't really acknowledge his marksman skills or his unwavering dedication to his department and teammates, for example. Much like Jill from the Resident Evil games, Chris does suffer from a limited personality. That is at least up until about Resident Evil 5, where Capcom beefed up his character more. But it was that lack of personality, albeit due to the poor writing in this movie, and the resemblance to Chris's physical attributes, at least in the first game in CV, that gave me the slightest of vibes that this indeed was supposed to be Chris Redfield. Claire I've already discussed pretty much, but to briefly revisit was boring and a complete sore to look at. She's got one face for slight intensity and one face that's more devoid of any emotion than the Game of Thrones Unsullied. Christ, even Claire from the games cracked a smile once in a while. As the movie's main protagonist, how are we, the audience, familiar with the series or not, supposed to root for the protagonist when she shows zero emotion? She does nothing in terms of winning our affections here, and it doesn't help, thanks to the shitty writing of course, that she doesn't ever really get the chance to do so. That is to say, with her relationship with Sherry from the games, for example, who in this movie is practically a nobody. But even her relationship with Chris is just shit. There's no true feeling of an authentic history between these two. Again, shitty writing. The pair, who are supposed to be brother and sister, have about as much chemistry together as I have with the woke. Lisa Trevor was a huge disaster and merely incorporated into the film as an empty nod to the fans. Yeah, at times she looks okay with how she stands and carries herself, but her involvement in the story has about as much weight as an anorexic on Weight Watchers. Wesker is about as far removed from his video game counterpart as you can get, and next to Jill, maybe one of the worst portrayals in the movie. All the obvious signs are there within the first couple of seconds of being introduced to the character. There's literally nothing that says that this guy is supposed to be the Wesker we all love. If all the characters weren't named in this movie, one could be forgiven for mistaking this character for Forrest or Richard or any white guy from the first game. Honestly, I couldn't care less to dissect the rest of the cast. They're all generally disappointing in every conceivable way. They act like completely different characters and have absolutely no backstory to aid in the relationship with the viewer. Without any depth in backstory, why should anyone care about the STARS unit, for example? In the games, they're regarded as Raccoon City's absolute best in combat tactics and rescue services, but in WTRC, the unit is hardly ever acknowledged. It's not given the busy and successful backstory that would help one understand more about the team and their dynamic with each other. You know, looking at this movie from a newbie's perspective, my god, they must think our series is nothing but dog shit with this interpretation. And it all comes down to two main things: writing and directing, both of which are provided by the same person, this guy. So this tells me one thing.
He's an asshole.
With writing this bad, as well as the sheer lack of innovation in direction and cinematography, joined with the miscasting of the characters, it's no surprise that this movie is bombing, and bombing hard. Going back to my recent review, I was actually told off by one random guy who said I wasn't a true Resident Evil fan because I liked the movie in places. If there's one thing I refuse to do, it's join the hate wagon, which I see all over social media right now. I think I'm just generally more relaxed about this movie and its fated failure because, as I said in my review, I'm just used to it now. 90% of game adaptations turn out to be crap, and this most certainly joins the ranks. I still don't feel it's unwatchable and will quite happily show this to my poor partner once a HD copy comes out online. To go back to my WTRC reaction video, I'm not paying for this, by the way. I'm going to be watching it, not because I want to watch it, because I'm going to watch it as a Resident Evil fan. I'm going to watch it, I'm curious, but I'm not going to pay for it. We fans deserve better. That's always been my message when reviewing this movie. But I just wanted to go a bit more in depth and clear up a few things, guys, as I said at the beginning of this particular video, just so you guys know exactly where I stand. So I hope this cleared up a few things from my initial review of Welcome to Raccoon City. If you do have any questions or want to give your take on the movie, you know where the comments are. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.